Our next segment here. Okay, this is a related segment to the debate. We've been talking about this a lot. We've actually been on this beat for years, really. I mean, since 2020, we really realized when the Democrats made an explicit pitch, and they started this in 2016, but in 2020, Russell wrote a blog about Biden's new coalition of, sort of affluent conservative moderates. And a lot of those affluent conservative moderates were Lincoln Project types. They were the never-Trumpers. Well, now, Eli Lake, the guy who looks like the penguin, who appeared at the Dissident Dialogues debate with Breonna Joy Gray. Right, exactly. He wrote an article that basically seeks to prove the thesis that the never-Trumpers are now becoming never-Biden voters and actually warming to Donald Trump, which is a danger that we always thought, or we always thought that was a risk that the Democrats were taking going down this road. But he puts it in words here. Joe Biden's threat last week to freeze arms shipments to Israel, along with reports that his administration is withholding intelligence about Hamas's leaders' whereabouts, has reverberated throughout U.S. politics. Now, some never-Trump donors say the Biden administration's policy towards the Jewish state is such a betrayal, they're considering jumping on board the Trump train. Call it the rise of the never Bidens, donors who once were more worried about Trump but now see Joe Biden's bid for a second term the greater threat to America. The Free Press spoke with 4 donors who contributed tens of millions of dollars in the past election cycle. They say they are reconsidering their political giving in light of the president's approach to the Israel-Hamas war. All of them expressed their frustration with Biden's CNN interview last Wednesday, in which he said of Israel, if they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah. Now, once again, we have to say they already had enough weapons to go into Rafah, and Biden gave them $1 billion more in weapons earlier this week. But just that rhetorical shot across the bow to try and win back some credibility with the base. Yeah. Exactly. They're going to go back to Trump now over this, is what Eli Lake supposes. And he cites some evidence. He might be right. Cliff Asness, a Republican donor who says he spent well over 7 figures to support Trump's primary opponent, Nikki Haley, told the Free Press that my never again is trumping my never Trump these days. Biden is a huge disappointment, really a moral outrage with this arms embargo being only the latest and greatest outrage, continued Asness, the co-founder of AQR Capital Management. Despite my long opposition to him, this makes me more likely, though I haven't quite gotten there yet, to see Trump as the better of 2 bad alternatives. Asness is not the only never-Trumper to move to the never-Biden camp. Billionaire entertainment mogul and major Democratic donor Haim Saban, who we covered last week, wrote of Biden's policy switch in an email to 2 senior White House advisors last week. Let's not forget that there are more Jewish voters who care about Israel than Muslim voters that care about Hamas. And as we covered last week, that is just such a loaded, bigoted statement. It's just unbelievable. And after CNN aired Biden's comments on Wednesday, hedge fund billionaire Bill Ackman, a registered Democrat, took to X to call the move one of the worst acts against an ally of a sitting president ever. Really? Hopefully, this means he won't be sitting for longer, meaning he wants him out. David Friedman.
Let me do a buck as you read this.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. David Friedman, who served as Trump's ambassador to Israel and has been in touch with many Trump skeptic Jewish donors, though he has no official role on the campaign, told the Free Press that he has seen more Jewish money coming in for Trump in the election. I think the announcement on Wednesday, he said, referring to Biden's arms decision, was the last straw for people who were already leaning very close to going for Trump. He continued, there is clearly a change going on. People who are active in politics with big money, people who were never Trumpers or reluctant hold-your-nose Trumpers are telling me that Trump has to win. Michael Granoff, a managing partner of Maniv, a venture fund dedicated to clean transportation technology, told the Free Press that he voted for Joe Biden in 2020, but has lost confidence in the president. I am not voting for Biden. I'm not saying I'm voting for Trump, but it's a non-zero chance now. Granoff was a staffer on the Clinton-Gore campaign and was a close friend of the late Senator Joe Lieberman. These days, he calls himself a political independent. He has given to campaigns for Representative Richie Torres, the Bronx Democrat. Yes, shocking, who has emerged as one of the most pro-Israel voices in Congress, as well as former Representative Liz Cheney, who broke with Trump after January 6th. Let's see here. Last Thursday, Bill Ackman reposted a statement from Trump blasting Biden's decision on his social media platform, Truth Social. Crooked Joe Biden, whether he knows it or not, just said he will withhold weapons from Israel as they fight to eradicate Hamas terrorists in Gaza. Hamas murdered thousands of innocent civilians, including babies, and are still holding Americans hostage if the hostages are still alive. Though Ackman contributed to both presidential campaigns of Barack Obama and Al Gore and gave $1 million to Representative Dean Phillips' primary run against Biden this year, he has more recently declared himself a centrist who will vote and support whoever is best for our country, regardless of their party affiliation. And now he seems to be leaning toward Trump. In a comment under Trump's statement, Ackman wrote simply, "Real Donald Trump speaks the truth." So these... So these never Trumpers are now never Biden over a rhetorical pushback against Israel on the eve of an escalation of genocide. Yeah, meaningless, which shows you what we always told you about these people. They were never Trump because Trump was an embarrassment to the empire. And what these people are really all about at the end of the day, imperialism, war, capitalism. They see America the way Reagan described America. It's a shining city on a hill. They see America as having offered them, because it has offered them, this wonderful way of life. And they feel like this way of life must be protected, and it has to be protected through force, through the subjugation, exploitation, and brutalization of people around the world. And they see that as a bargain that they just have to make, maintain, and uphold, and defend whenever it becomes under the slightest threat. And they know, and they've always known this, they've always known that Trump really posed no threat to that. Trump was an embarrassment. Trump was not their type. Trump was humiliating. But Trump really posed no threat to their way of life at the end of the day. And so when the choice comes to actually, you know what? I can't even finish that sentence. I was going to say, when the choice comes to give an inch on empire or double down, they're going to choose to double down. But Biden's not giving them an inch. Like, I can't even say that. He's not giving them any. He's not doing anything. He's given Israel everything they've wanted. He's saying he's going to deny weapons now as a political move to try and win back some of the young people and some of the Arabs who are going to boycott the election altogether. And they can't even handle that. It just shows everything they told you they feared about Donald Trump, they didn't actually fear. They had no fear of it whatsoever. And if this is not evidence of that, the fact that they are willing to back him over Biden now, over nothing, shows they never feared Donald Trump for the reasons they told you.
Well, of course they didn't. At the height of Russiagate, Nancy Pelosi, presiding over the House, passed a bill expanding Donald Trump's spying powers. Now, if you believe, as you've been claiming, that Donald Trump is a Manchurian candidate working for the Russians, why on earth would you vote to expand his spying powers? That would be a non-starter. He's a traitor. He's working for Putin, right? They never believed it. It was always a show. As Taibbi said, I think very shortly after Trump was elected, or not long before, he wrote an article describing Trump, paraphrasing a bit. He puts the ugly face on the ugly reality of empire. Right. And that was really their issue with him. He wasn't able to go up there and talk that shining city on a hill bullshit, nor was he inclined to.
Right.
Trump would go on stage and say, "We got a lot of killers here." Or he'd say, we want the oil. You don't say that. You go up and you talk about incubator babies, or you build up whatever regional tyrant you want to overthrow as the worst tyrant since Genghis Khan friend of show Genghis Khan. You know, like, so this is really what it comes down to for them. And as has often been said, scratch a liberal, a fascist will bleed. These people are basically liberals, ranging roughly center right, center left. I mean, they have the same basic politics. That's why Bill Ackman, I mean, that sums it up very well. He donated to Richie Torres and Liz Cheney. That is the political range of these people.
Right.
And they very comfortably cohabitate in that political space. So it's not much for them to just go over to Donald Trump. And second point, as much as they might be dedicated to certain geopolitical principles, they wouldn't do this because they disagree with Biden's decision on, say, Ukraine. If Biden turned around and said, tomorrow we're conditioning aid to Ukraine on something, they wouldn't all of a sudden be talking about voting for Donald Trump. I can't think of any geopolitical decision Biden could make that would get this reaction. So why are you going to get this reaction around Israel? That's cultish. That's going beyond geopolitics. That's more the way a dedicated Nazi would have reacted to an insult against the Reich than it is the way a realpolitik neocon would normally react to an extremely minor and mostly for show diplomatic statement. That's, you are insulting the honor of the German people. That's what that is.
Yeah. And that's really all it is. That's what's really amazing about that story, and how you have all of these people of influence willing to hold their nose and vote for the guy that they told you was Hitler. That's why. I mean, these are not, like you said, if you're donating to Richie Torres and Liz Cheney, okay, like, you are basically donating to the status quo, to the maintenance of a certain system, right? Richie Torres to the left of Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney is not a moderate Republican. She's an anti-Trump Republican, but she's actually an extremely right-wing Republican. And Richie Torres, obviously,
she doesn't hate the gays, though. They have to hang their hat on.
Right, exactly. Richie Torres, obviously a liberal from the Bronx. This is Bill Ackman playing the cards. Okay, I'll support the right wing of the status quo maintenance machine where I have to, because they're going to win in Wyoming. And I'll support the left wing of that, Richie Torres, because he can win in the Bronx, and we don't want an anti-Israel candidate winning in the Bronx. So it doesn't really, like, your ideology doesn't really matter to these people. They can manage the system as long as they have people in there whose loyalties to the system trump whatever ideological convictions they may have. Basically, they want people they can buy. These are rich people. They want politicians they can buy. They want politicians who will maintain a status quo the way it is. And one way in which I think they felt threatened by Donald Trump was because he's an embarrassment to the empire, because
a little unpredictable.
And he's a little unpredictable, but because he puts an ugly face on the empire, he generates this sort of discontent amongst the public, right? If you have a guy like Reagan who's out there talking in very flowery language about what a wonderful country we are and what a wonderful system we have here, it's it's much less likely under a leader like that the peasants are going to get restless and try to overthrow you. Trump, when he's throwing out these red pills every now and then and talking in very kind of dark and cynical terms about the country,
American carnage,
right? That creates some kinetic energy at the rank and file, and they can overthrow you. And they don't want that. So whether you're a right-wing Republican like Liz Cheney or a fairly progressive Democrat like Richie Torres, I mean, Richie Torres is not far from a squad member, except for Israel, because he's bought and paid for by the Israel lobby. I mean, Richie Torres' voting record is pretty liberal as Democrats go. That doesn't matter. That really doesn't matter to the people who buy Congress. All that matters is, at the end of the day, are you going to commit to maintaining our way of life inside the walls of the empire, yes or no? And the fact that Joe Biden took a very, very tiny symbolic shot across the bow and said, we're not going to supply you new weapons if you go into Rafah, even though it had no effect on the war itself, now Trump is on the table. Now Trump is on the table. Forget everything we said up until now. He's on the table.
You make a very good point there about how little they really care about any of this, as long as you maintain the empire as it is. And that's I think what really made them nervous about Trump, because he would make noises about overthrowing the empire. He would attack the intelligence services. You know, like these things are not acceptable for them. But that was really their only issue. They never believed in Russiagate. If they had, they would not have expanded his spying powers. They never believed that. That was always just a propaganda tool. And now look, he's saying what they want on Israel. In the end, his economic policies were very good for them. He gave them a big tax cut. So he's not gonna actually do anything that really takes anything out of their bowl. Fuck it. He's good. He's good on Israel. We can bring him along on the rest. And hey, you know, at the end of the day, he wanted to pull out of all these places, and we just thwarted him.
Right. Exactly.
We just thwarted him. We just didn't do what he wanted. Which really, hey, anybody talking about democracy and democratic process who doesn't understand the implications of that, you're a moron. You're a moron. What if you get somebody who's anti-war from the left? What does this tell you? What does this tell you? What if Bernie had been elected? Would he have really been able to change our deployment of forces? Because the Trump example would suggest no.
Please clap.